It's the 3rd of October, 1985, and excited passengers board a luxury cruise liner in Genoa, Italy, that's heading for ports in Egypt, Israel, and Greece. It's a joyous occasion on a warm and sunny day for setting out to explore the Mediterranean. For many on board, this is the adventure of a lifetime, a trip they've dreamt of for years. For 69-year-old Leon Klinghoffer and his wife Marilyn, this is a doubly special occasion. They are celebrating not only their 36th wedding anniversary, but Marilyn's birthday. For them, it's a journey that's been long in the making. But not everyone on board has good intentions for the trip. And what begins as a celebratory voyage on the Med soon turns into a truly hellish experience. One that no one could have predicted. On this ill-fated voyage, no one is safe. A luxurious cruise ship was departing from Genoa in Italy with approximately 750 passengers on board, ready to make a voyage along the Mediterranean. It was a privileged occasion for all. But for 69-year-old Leon Klinghoffer and his wife Marilyn, it was the cause for a joint celebration of a lifetime. A few months earlier in New York, the Klinghoffers were enjoying their retirement. With their 36th wedding anniversary on the horizon, as well as Marilyn's 67th birthday quickly approaching, Leon decided they needed to celebrate in style. Marilyn was overjoyed with the cruise, but they had some concerns about Leon's mobility limiting the experience.
After suffering 2 strokes in recent years, Leon is bound to a wheelchair. He spent his life working as an appliance manufacturer in a working-class neighborhood in New York. This is a big deal for he and Marilyn. They finally get to enjoy his retirement, even though his mobility isn't quite what he had expected it to be.
The Klinghoffers had 2 grown daughters. They were both pushing Leon to finally relax and go and have a good time. It was a long-deserved reward after a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice. Because of Leon's partial paralysis, they had to look for a ship that would be wheelchair-friendly.
The most important thing to Leon and Marilyn are their children. They have 2 daughters who they're very proud of. They're still quite close to them, even though one's gone on to college and one started a family of her own. Even so, they're both adults with lives of their own. It's very hard not to continue to put them first. After much persistence, Leon's daughters convince him to do something special for this anniversary. For once in his life, he's got to put himself and their mother first.
Longing to explore the ancient world, Leon booked a Mediterranean cruise with scheduled stops in Egypt, Israel, and Greece. October 1985, Genoa, Italy. Leon and Marilyn Klinghoffer boarded the ship and looked forward to their cruise of the Mediterranean.
Even though Leon likes to be independent, this is a really crowded ship, and it's going to be almost impossible for him to navigate it on his own.
An excited Leon and Marilyn settled into their cabin. Although they had been traveling all day, the couple were too excited to rest and relax. They had a busy few days ahead of them and couldn't wait to get started. Immediately, they made plans for a no-expense-spared meal that evening to celebrate. As Marilyn prepared herself, Leon decided to take in the view from the deck. Determined to get the most of this once-in-a-lifetime experience, Leon made his way out onto the deck. While Leon took in the view, he was passed by three quiet, well-dressed, serious-looking young men carrying their luggage. All three of them quietly went about their business, barely acknowledging Leon in his wheelchair as they brushed past him.
Leon doesn't know it yet, but he's just met the men who will be responsible for changing his life forever.
Some of us have a sixth sense that warns us when something bad is about to happen. Did this happen to Leon as well? In that moment, did Leon have any inkling of how much these men were going to change his life? What role they would play in the next coming days?
The three men were members of the Palestinian Liberation Front, traveling under false documents. They were on board the ship because they planned to disembark in Israel and conduct acts of terror. That evening, Leon and Marilyn ventured to the dining room for Marilyn's birthday dinner. Both of them were looking forward to an amazing meal.
Leon's determined to make the most of this experience. This is the first trip he's taken with his wife like this, and it's a big celebration. It's a moment like no other, so why not live it up while he has the chance?
Leon and Marilyn marked the start of the trip and their anniversary in style with a bottle of champagne.
The crew always wants to make sure that all the guests have the best time they possibly can, that they're happy and relaxed and enjoying all the cruise ship has to offer. The captain is no different in this regard.
The captain wanted to make Marilyn's birthday experience extra special. He personally brought Marilyn her birthday cake and offered to pose for pictures with the happy couple.
Little did they know that this celebration would be cut short in a truly shocking and unexpected way. Things are about to go from heaven to hell on the high seas.
While the Klinghoffers celebrated, the terrorists were checking their weapons and preparing for the carnage they planned to unleash. The 3rd of October, 1985. And passengers were boarding a cruise liner in Genoa, Italy. It would be a trip around the Mediterranean Sea, with stops in several ports along the way, including Egypt, Israel, and Greece. Leon Klinghoffer and his wife Marilyn celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary, as well as Marilyn's birthday, while aboard the liner. As the ship explored the Mediterranean, there were smiles and excitement all round. What began as a joyous celebration of love, family, and devotion would quickly dissolve into chaos, violence, and fear the following day. With the evening winding down, Marilyn told Leon she was ready to go and get some rest.
Leon's really glad he took his daughter's advice. The cruise has been fabulous. They're both having a great time. There couldn't be any better way to celebrate this anniversary.
Another bottle of champagne was offered up by the waiter, but Leon waved it off, as they had a whole trip in front of them. It had been a night to remember, and Leon left a generous tip. Leon and Marilyn capped the night off with a romantic stroll along the deck, where they took in the beauty of the starry sky. They gazed at the stunning night sky from the edge of the deck. It was a view that was unrivaled by any they had ever seen before. Marilyn finally said that it was time to go.
These are working class folks from the Lower East Side of New York City, and they've never seen a night sky like this.
The moment of awe was over. It had been the perfect night, but like all good things, it had to come to an end. With the next port of call approaching, the captain made his final preparations.
The ship's captain is a true professional, and he's well aware of his vast responsibilities. He takes this extremely seriously.
A captain must make 1,000 decisions every day.
We tend to think of the captain as just being in charge of the ship, but he's responsible for the lives of everyone on board. He wants them to have a good time, but their safety is of utmost importance.
After completing the next day's itinerary, the captain filed his log and retired for the night. The journey was off to the perfect start, with everything going as planned. The next port of call was Alexandria in Egypt. The following morning, a porter tended to the busy task of making over the cabins.
There are moments in everyone's life where we wish we could change them. We wish we could have done something differently. We wish we could go back. This is one of those moments for the porter. It's one room that he'll always wish he'd never walked into.
He entered the cabin and discovered a massive arsenal of weaponry displayed throughout the room. It was a sight unlike anything he'd ever seen or could possibly even imagine.
This is an arsenal. And really, in order to get this on board, somebody has gone to great lengths to achieve it.
The porter was never trained on how to deal with something like this. He was probably in shock, like most of us would be. How often does one stumble upon something like this in the course of doing their job?
Knowing that there was very little time to alert ship's security, the porter attempted to maintain his composure and remain as calm as possible. The terrorists had no choice but to quickly react to the situation.
The porter's so frantic he can barely speak. He's doing everything he can just to get the words to come out of his mouth.
They made a decision to take over the ship. The first mate learned of the immediate danger on board. Along with the porter, he scrambled to inform the captain. But with time quickly running out, it was already too late. Leon and Marilyn Klinghoffer were on board a luxury 9-day cruise along the Mediterranean. It was to celebrate their 36th wedding anniversary and Marilyn's birthday. But not everyone on the ship was there to relax and enjoy a pleasant holiday. A porter made a shocking discovery, and the day was about to take a dark and deadly turn. The terrorists were exposed, and they had to forfeit their plan and improvise. In their panic, they decided to take over the ship.
Now the clock is ticking, and anything can happen. The first port of call is Egypt, and the bulk of the passengers are excited to visit the pyramids and fully embrace the experience.
Even though Leon doesn't feel comfortable getting off the ship, he's not letting that get him down. He's trying his best to learn everything he can and enjoy every moment of the experience. Marilyn isn't going to abandon her husband in search of adventure, but luckily there's plenty they can do on the ship. She's really excited about going out and seeing what she can find on board and exploring some of the delicacies.
In their cabin, Marilyn lovingly doted over her husband. While most of the passengers disembarked to go on a sightseeing tour of Cairo, they and a few other passengers remained on board for the short stay in port. With most of the passengers off the ship touring the sights of Egypt, Leon and Marilyn took the opportunity to freely walk the decks. They settled in for lunch. With the sun shining and the bustling sense of positivity all around, there was a sense of excitement in the air. Meanwhile, the ship's porter alerted the captain of the increasingly dire situation occurring on board. He informed the captain that the armed men were planning to take over the ship. The captain sent out an emergency call and alerted the authorities that he had armed men on his ship. He didn't know who they were or what their purpose was. The captain then tried to raise the alarm to warn the crew of the dangerous situation that was developing. Unaware of any immediate threats on board, the dining room operated as normal.
Unbeknownst to the couple, this may be the last moment of happiness that they ever share together. If only Leon had known, what would he have done differently?
Marilyn said that it was time for them to leave, as they had a busy day ahead.
The armed terrorists burst into the dining room and they repeatedly fire shots over the heads of the stunned passengers.
The terrorists addressed the room amidst all the chaos.
The terrorists begin to round up the passengers and staff, forcing them into a back corner, shouting, "This is a hostage-taking."
I can't even imagine how horrible this would be. You're out on a ship in the middle of the water. There's literally no place you can go. This has to be the most terrifying moment of their lives.
Panic ensued, but the terrorists were resolute and had full control of the situation.
Marilyn's in a horrible position, as she and Leon might be the most obvious targets in the room. But when she sees a narrow window to escape, she takes it.
Seeing the chaos around them, Marilyn made a hasty decision. While the terrorists were yelling and threatening everyone, she would try to sneak Leon out of danger.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work out as she hoped.
The terrorists forced Leon and Marilyn into the corner with the rest of the frightened passengers.
Everyone's essentially helpless in this situation. They've got guns drawn on them and they have no way to fight back.
For Leon, it must have been terrifying. Being confined to a wheelchair, he's perhaps the most vulnerable person on this ship.
They then rounded up the hostages and demanded to see everyone's identification.
It's clear they want to know everyone's nationality. This is a cruise ship with passengers from all around the world, so they may be looking for someone of a particular ethnicity or from a particular country. In this case, they're looking for Americans, perhaps of a particular religious belief. Leon attempts to hide something from his aggressor, but to no avail.
Knowing he had found just what he'd been looking for, the hijacker tore Leon's necklace off, making sure everyone could see it. He then took Leon's passport, which showed he was an American citizen.
Leon's identity is laid bare for all to see. He's a disabled Jewish American from New York. He's obviously a target to these guys for whatever reason, but then again, so is Marilyn.
The group's leader identified the porter who made the shocking discovery that morning. And ordered him to take Leon away from the dining room. Despite a disagreement between the terrorists, their leader was intent on seeing his plan through.
They order the porter to take Leon out onto the deck. But what they plan to do is anyone's guess.
Leon must be absolutely horrified. What's going to happen next?
Seeing how distraught Marilyn was, Leon tried to reassure his wife before he was escorted out.
The very notion of terrorism is to create fear. And it's evident that by selecting Leon because of his nationality and particular religious beliefs, the terrorists are trying to instill fear in the passengers.
The porter removed Leon from the dining room. The terrorists then announced to their hostages that at precisely 3 p.m., executions would begin if their demands were not met. With the wheelchair-bound Leon being led away, the other hostages were concerned about what might happen next.
Is anyone on the ship safe?
Despite his apparent fate, Leon wasn't going down without a fight.
Leon knows these may well be the last moments of his life, and he's going to do anything to defend himself, but it might all be for nothing.
Armed terrorists had taken control of a cruise liner in the Mediterranean. The group's leader discovered that one passenger, Leon Klinghoffer, was a Jewish American. When he threatened his wife Marilyn, Leon resisted and was ordered to be removed from the dining room. Leon tried to reassure his wife before he was escorted out.
It's hard to imagine what would be going through any passenger's mind, anyone who saw this and is waiting to see what's going to happen next. When the crew who's been trained to keep you safe can't help you, who knows what could happen next?
When they reached the deck, it was unclear what the terrorists' intentions were for Leon. But when the group's leader ordered the porter to take him towards the rear of the deck, it became increasingly clear what fate was awaiting him.
If there was ever any doubt in Leon's mind about what these men planned to do with him, it's starting to fade away. He knows that these could be his last few minutes on Earth.
The terrorists violently attacked Leon. leaving him battered and bruised.
Unfortunately, he's not finished. Not yet.
It's really unknown if he chose Leon for a specific reason or if he's just a remorseless killer. Either way, he shows he has no regard for human life.
Then, tragically, the terrorist shot Leon multiple times.
It's the end of a harrowing ordeal for Leon, and it never should have happened. It's absolutely brutal.
The terrorist ordered the porter to throw Leon's body overboard and dispose of the evidence.
The porter's horrified by what he's just seen, and he can barely function. He can't muster the strength to move Leon's lifeless body.
The terrorist spotted a crewman and ordered him to assist the porter in dumping the body. Even with their combined strength, the task of disposing of Leon's body was a struggle. Finally, the pair managed to lift him and throw him over the railing.
Leon's gone forever with this shocking act of brutal violence, but there are still other hostages on board, lives that are now at stake.
Now, unfortunately, Leon's body is missing. So as a role of an investigator, we would try and obtain the dental work or find a DNA sample that may have been taken from this individual in the past that we could use once the body hopefully is recovered.
Leon's murderer changed his blood-stained shirt for a clean one, perhaps in an effort to hide the brutality of his actions. After the first execution of a hostage, the terrorists demanded safe passage to Syria. But the news of Leon's murder resulted in the authorities refusing to accept the terrorists. Confusion reigned as negotiators scrambled to find a peaceful resolution.
They're charting a new course, and they're executing anyone who attempts to stand in their way. When the captain sees Leon's passport, he's got to know right away what happened. He's got his first victim on his hands, and things are spiraling out of control.
As the terrorists announced their terms and final destination, international officials worked tirelessly to avoid a bloodbath.
This is why it's so important to have this type of personality be a captain on a ship like this. You want someone who's calm in the face of crisis. You want someone who's not going to panic when something like this happens.
Bound for the next port of call, all hope appeared to be lost. As the hostages attempted to remain optimistic that the situation would be resolved, it appeared as though their fears might quickly be put to rest. The terrorist leader told his cohorts it was time to leave, as they would be boarding a flight to Tunisia.
It seems as though the situation is over. Maybe they're going to make it out alive.
Leon's still missing, and Marilyn desperately needs to know where he is. Her panic is starting to set in again, and rightly so. In that moment, it's clear that Marilyn will never see her husband again, and she may never find out what happened to him. 36 years of marriage and commitment have come to a shocking end. And even worse, those responsible may never be brought to justice.
The terrorists are members of the Palestinian Liberation Front, an offshoot of the PLO led by Yasser Arafat. So to avoid an international incident, they were given safe passage home to avoid capture.
However, the plane carrying the terrorists was intercepted by American fighter jets and forced to land in Italy.
There will be no safe haven for these men after all.
Nearly a week later, Leon's body was discovered by authorities.
The medical examiner's office would be involved in terms of trying to help identify the body once it has been recovered. That would be either through DNA or through dental work.
An autopsy was performed before he was returned to the United States to be laid to rest. Surprisingly, the group's leader was able to avoid being charged. He fled the country and managed to avoid detection for well over a decade.
It's not until 2003 that the group's leader is captured by Allied forces.
After the identity of Leon's murderer was confirmed, government officials informed his family. For them, the news of his arrest put an end to the decades-long struggle for answers and closure. The terrorist leader continued to deny any part in Leon's death.
The surviving hostages were brought in to identify the terrorist.
However, there was one hostage whose absence was noticeable: Marilyn Klinghoffer.
Tragically, Marilyn passed away from colon cancer just 4 months after her husband's murder.
He's left with a lifetime in prison to ponder his brutal actions from so long ago and the hurt that he's caused.
Fortunately, the memory of Marilyn and Leon has been kept alive by their family.
To this day, Leon and Marilyn's family continue to operate a memorial fund initially established by Marilyn herself shortly after Leon's death, designed to educate the world about terrorism and its victims.
While nothing will ever make losing their father in this way better, at least they had some closure, knowing that the people who did this to their parents are behind bars.
From the 9-1, switch that over, that's the young blonde. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast. Saw you when